Dear students, good evening. Welcome to Law Excellence IAS. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 29th April 2020. The articles for discussion are divided into two groups. One is Deep, which covers editorials of The Hindu. The other is News Analysis, which is called TNA. The respective pages in Hyderabad and Bengaluru edition are provided for you over here. The first article for discussion is Vividly Imagining the Life of Migrant Workers. This article essentially talks about human dignity and also providing the social security to the migrant workers in India. Either it is in the normal circumstances or during lockdown, the most neglected segment of our society are the migrant workers. In this context, the state has to play a greater role as a welfare state is the essence of this particular article. Now, let us see the details of this particular article. You know that in India, the total migrant working population is close to 10 crores to 12 crores. That is huge by any standard. These people move from their home, cross the states to reach and to find good work. Wherever they are, they live in very shabby conditions. Even during the normal times, there is no proper living and working atmosphere for these people. So let me put it this way, there is a pattern over here. These people from northern India and eastern India, they go to west and south. So west and south are the major sources of employment, and north and east are the major sources of workforce for today. And there is also intrastate migration. Now, if you see during the normal circumstances, they do not have any kind of social security. See, if they stay at their home places, probably they can get certain benefits from the government. As they are migrant to a new place, new urban area, these people do not get any governmental support. And second is, they are at the mercy of the employer. There is no employment contract to them, and there is no fixed salary, and their salaries are unduly cut. They live in very shoddy places without water, food, electricity, with no basic toilet facilities. And these migrant workers, if they are women, they are sexually exploited. So it means that even in the normal circumstances, they get themselves exposed to crime day in and day out. And it became worse during the lockdown. So in this context, it is the responsibility of the Indian state to behave like a welfare state. A welfare state is one which can provide for or guarantee the minimal welfare to its population. And during the lockdown, let us see the situation. Students from Kota are being brought to their native places. And similarly, people stuck abroad were also brought to India. Then these migrant workers are not being allowed to travel to their home places. Is that mean they are less human or less Indian? Why we are not taking care of them? So their poverty is their reason to be discriminated. So in this context, understand carefully, there is equality. When we discriminate the people on the basis of their economic condition, this equality will not tie down well with the human dignity. So human dignity and equality go well with each other only when we give or else respect to the human life and when we celebrate the human life. That is what it says. Even under democracy or democratic norms of equality, living on charity is demeaning. What do I mean by this? Let me give you an example to explain this. These migrant workers, these were stationed in a school in Rajasthan, if I am not wrong. These people are getting the free ration from the government. These did not sit idle. They started painting that school and they painted it beautifully. Why did they do that? This is where comes dignity from work. So they do not want to take anything for free. They felt that taking something for free is demeaning. So they wanted to reciprocate that with the work which they know. That's why they beautified that particular school. So that's why human dignity is also intricately connected with the work which he or she does. Human dignity is intricately connected with something called equality. And these all are connected with self respect. So, in this context, directive principles of the state policy we have. These directive principles of state policy, from the very beginning, they were talking about work. These are social and economic rights. Though they are not enforceable in the court of the law, these essentially make Indian state as a welfare state. See, we are not asking the non-material needs. We are asking the government to fulfill basic material needs of the citizens. Basic material needs means the comfort of home, having food, basic sanitary amenities. These are the basic material needs of the human being. We are not talking about bigger things like leisure, respect for intellectuality or freedom of choice. Like these non-material needs, we are not talking about. As a welfare state, state has to take the minimum responsibility of material needs. If you remember freedom from want, one of the basic goals of a democratic society, the freedom from want specifically talks about freedom from want of material needs. An Indian state has to strive towards this. That is what this article talks about. The next article for discussion is signaling support. As the syllabus and issue everything is given over here, I am not talking about that. You can read it from the slides. Let me go directly into the context of this article. You know that Franklin Templeton, it has closed certain funds. Then obviously it can lead to a kind of dynamo effect. It can collapse the entire capital market. In this scenario, RBI has RBI reacted immediately to solve the situation. This entire article surrounds that particular reaction. Let us see what the reaction, how effective this reaction can be. First, we need to appreciate the RBI for quickly reacting and understanding the situation. If not, it would have become another NBFC like crisis. You know, NBFCs or crisis in NBFCs is deep and due to late reaction of the RBI. Unlike this, RBI has quickly reacted to it. So, let us understand how the mutual funds function to understand this article better. Let's take, I have certain money. So, investors like me, they will pool up and they will fund or they will buy certain units in a mutual fund. And this mutual fund will have a fund manager. This fund manager organizes that mutual fund and he will invest that money into various kinds of securities. And if these securities, let's take if he invests in shares, if the price of the share increases, the value of these units will increase. As the value of the units increases, the returns to the investors will come. So, whenever the investors wants to withdraw, they can withdraw and what they get in return is the day's price value of that particular unit which they bought in the mutual fund. This is in a nutshell how the mutual fund works. Now let's take, if all these investors wants to withdraw the money, it will lead to a run on that mutual fund. It means mutual fund will be in a position to repay all the money. It means mutual fund has to immediately withdraw or sell off its securities to pay the liquidity to the investors. When they start selling off the securities, the stock market collapse starts and the evaporation of the wealth happens into the country. This is what I am calling as dynamo effect. Do you know how much is the fund or value of the mutual funds together in India? It is 15 lakh crore rupees. It means if 15 lakh crore rupees starts evaporating from the stock markets, understand the havoc it can create. It will be a bloodbath. Now, what the RBI did, immediately it started pumping in money, liquidity into the mutual funds. Now, if any investor wants to withdraw the money, the mutual fund need not worry, it can borrow the money from a bank. The banks are expected to give loans of 50,000 crore rupees and necessary norms are eased for the banks. Normally, banks are allowed to invest up to 25% in this capital market investments. Now, that particular limit was removed. So, in that way, RBI took an immediate step. But the problem will be with the banks. To what extent in these circumstances banks will be ready to take the risk? Why? One way the stock markets are collapsing and even the blue chip company shares have fallen drastically. And tomorrow rating companies are bound to revise the ratings of these blue chip companies too, or best performing companies too. It means value of those funds is expected to come down. And if banks take these funds as a guarantee, tomorrow if the value comes down, it will be a dangerous situation for the bank. So this is how the situation stands. Now, who has to help us now? You know, these entire structures are market based instruments. So I am saying in a nutshell that there is a chance that markets can fail. If the market fails, who has to come for the rescue? It is the state. It means central government shall get prepared itself to rescue the mutual funds if necessary. That is what this article is essentially talking about. The next article is privacy concerns during a pandemic. This article is about the Arogya Setu app and various surveillance mechanisms taken up by the state. So the article expresses the concerns of the citizens' privacy and violation of the norms of rule of law by the government itself. This is what is the major concern. Now let us see the highlights of the article. Let us see the famous statement by Hans Raj Khanna. You know who is Hans Raj Khanna? He was the one who gave the judgment against Indira Gandhi during internal emergency. He paid dearly with his Chief Justice position for going against Indira Gandhi then. Mr. Hans Raj Khanna, in writing his judgment, he made it very clear that the greatest danger to democracy, to liberty, lies in insidious encroachment by men of zeal, well meaning but lacking in due deference for the rule of law. Probably their zeal, they have a zeal to do something. They are well meaning, they have well meaning, but they have little respect for the rule of law. If the rule of law is not respected, the outcome of that is violation of the rights of the citizen and chaos. Now the second part is Supreme Court of India has spoken about privacy, right to privacy in Puttaswamy versus Union of India case. So in this what the Supreme Court said, right to privacy is integral to Article 21 of the Constitution, which is right to life. But there can be limited restrictions onto that the state can impose, or the state can impose reasonable restrictions. And state also, or Supreme Court also has clearly stated what they can be. First is, these particular restrictions have to be sanctioned by law. It means there has to be proper legislative backing. And the legislative backing has to come with proper reasons. And next, whatever the reasons, whatever the restrictions which are applied, these have to be proportionate to the need of the day. It means non-proportionality is not acceptable. So, whatever the action which you want to take, restrictions that have to be imposed, has to be proportional to the objective the state wants to realize. So, like these, the restrictions were imposed by the Supreme Court. Now, under this particular lockdown, the government is using technology in three different ways. One is to identify this particular suspicious COVID-19 cases. The second is geotagging them, geofencing them, so that their mobility can be controlled. Third is for contract tracing. Now, do we have a legal support for the state to do all these things, to collect the data of the citizens and to monitor them? There is no proper law to support these particular activities. And the second thing is, do state have proper reasons for all these things? Did the state clearly and transparently told to the citizens why it has to be done? Till now, no state took that particular effort to explain it to the students, to explain it to the people why they have to download this Arogya Setu app. So in this context, again this article emphasizes that though the actions are having a good intention, but Rule of law, if it is not being put in place or not respected, the outcome is the curtailment of the liberty of the citizens. The next article is unlocking justice in the lockdown. This article essentially talks about considering legal services as the essential services even during lockdown period. Let us see the highlights of this article. Legislature, executive, like that, judiciary is also an important organ of the state. So, without justice, no society can persist. In this scenario, during the lockdown, judicial services are not considered as essential services. Today, executive has become all powerful. You have got many video clippings where police are beating the people or police are summarily punishing without any trial. And second, domestic violence cases have increased. In the normal circumstances, in a domestic violence case, people would have got the protection orders from the court. Now there is no such a recourse. So, in UK and USA, what they have recognized is the people who are performing the judicial services or actions are considered as essential and exempted from lockdown. It is not done in India. So it is, or else it affects the delivery of justice in this country. So the article demands that essential services list also shall consist of legal services. The next article, ministry does U-turn on plasma therapy. Now let us understand what is this plasma therapy. If you take our blood, this blood consists of certain fluid components and then certain cells. RBC, WBC, all these are cells, and then you have this fluid component. It forms 55% of our blood. This fluid component consists of various kinds of proteins. The most important among them are antibodies. What are antibodies? Whenever you have a virus in your body, to fight that, our body produces antibodies, which is called an immune response. So antibodies are an outcome of immune response. These antibodies will be extracted from the plasma of a recovered COVID-19 patient, and this can be used as a treatment for a patient who is yet to recover. See carefully. So a patient who has got antibodies for COVID-19, it will be collected after his recovery and used in patients whose health is deteriorating. Now, in USA and UK, in clinical trials, they said that it is showing some positive results. This therapy also has certain other side effects. Remember, first is the antibodies will also produce certain other reactions in the body of recipient. Who will be the worst deteriorated patient? Aged men. When these aged people are being given plasma therapy, their body cannot adjust to it. There can be untoward consequences. That is the first thing. Second, many of the people carry diseases in their blood. By collecting the plasma and inducing it into others' body, it can lead to a carriage of diseases to the recipient. Infections can be carried. Our blood products can lead to one or the other reactions. So that's why plasma therapy has to be done with utmost care, and it needs a lot of attention. So that's why, unless it is proven, resorting to plasma therapy is unwarranted. That's how this article is trying to project it as. The next article for discussion, anti-graft law covers deemed universities. Among today's articles, I consider this as the most important. Let us see the highlights of this article. You know that Prevention of Corruption Act was enacted in 1988. Later it was amended in 2018, which we will see later. So here the public servant is vaguely defined. Initially it was meant to be applied only to the bureaucrats. Later Supreme Court has broadened this definition of public servant to cover even the politicians or political officials. Now, today, this has been further broadened by this particular judgment of the Supreme Court. What the Supreme Court has said, let us see clearly. The purpose under the PC Act was to shift the focus from who are traditionally called the public officials to those individuals who perform public duties. It means that the people who perform the public duties, these also will be considered as public servants. So, deemed universities, those these are under private management, as these officers who are running the deemed universities are considered doing as public duties, they come under the purview of the Prevention of Corruption Act. It means tomorrow telecom operators who are performing the public duties, they also can be considered as they can also be brought under the ambit of this anti-graft clause. Anyone who is performing a public act shall be considered as a public servant. If Supreme Court is going by this definition, it is going to make the things change forever. So, the broadening of the law happens like never before. What is the biggest weakness of the Prevention of Corruption Act in India? It do not cover the private agencies and private people. It do not cover India's companies, whatever the graft which they perform outside the borders of India. So, international actions of Indians do not come under the purview of this act. So, in these circumstances, the broadening of the definition of the public servants will also bring in private entities under the ambit of the Prevention of Corruption Act in the future. So, if you want to know certain background, in 2018, this particular law was amended. How? Previously, the person who was taking the graft, so he is the only to be considered as a criminal, and bribe giver is considered as a victim. So it means the person who is taking the bribe only shall go for prosecution. But today, bribe giver is considered as equally offensive as the bribe taker. So you know that among the corruption we have something called collusive corruption. So in the collusive corruption, both the parties, bribe giver and bribe taker, will be benefited. So that's why bribe giver is also brought under the purview of this particular thing. So this collusive corruption prevention of this is the first objective. In this case, what about the coercive corruption, where bribe taker forced the bribe giver to pay the bribe? So in this context, there is a provision. Any person who is a victim of coercive corruption has to report that within 7 days. If not, it will be considered as a collusive corruption. Now, most of the times we don't want to report the corruption cases. We want to make our life easy. And many of the cases now will go underreported because there is a chance bribe giver will also be brought to the prosecution here. And the next thing is the word criminal misconduct. Understand carefully. The burden of proof previously lied on the person who is charged with taking bribe. Let's take investigation officer has a burden to prove that he is a culprit in the normal cases. But today, under the Prevention of Corruption Act, investigation officer will not have that particular responsibility. The person who is bearing the charges, he has to prove that he is innocent. So in this context, investigation agencies are very liberal to frame the charges of corruption on many public officials. Because of this action, public officials are feared to make the decisions. That's why any file, they will pass it on to the higher level. You know that Mr. Parekh, an honest officer, was facing charges and prosecution because of such particular thing. It has affected the morale of the officers. That's why today the definition of this criminal action is reduced only to disproportionate assets and possession of material property from a particular bribe activity. So that's how these particular amendments have come up. Bribe giver is also punishable. And the next is the criminal misconduct definition is reduced only to disproportionate assets and possession of property from this bribe activity. This is what we need to remember. The next article for discussion is US CIRF downgrades India in 2020 list. What is this US CIRF? US Commission for International Religious Freedom. Now there is a law called US International Freedom Religious Freedom Act. So according to this act, US appoints one commission which has to report on the international religious freedoms to executive and legislature. Its advice is not binding, but it creates a moral pressure on those particular bodies, that is executive and legislature. In this context, with regard to CAA and NRC particularly, India was downgraded. So, it may recommend for certain restrictions, trade restrictions, travel restrictions against Indian ministers and officials who are participant to this. But however, do not worry much about this. India is stopped accepting these reports long back. The next article for discussion is South Asia faces health crisis as children miss vaccination. So vaccination has got huge gains for the humanity. We are able to eliminate polio, measles, etc. from this world because of vaccination. Now, as vaccination is stopped because of lockdown, it can bring in new challenges to India and countries in South Asia. In this case, in India, intensified Mission Indradhanush, IMI, is there. So the children below 2 years of age and then pregnant mothers, these have to be provided with vaccination compulsorily. And we started this, if I am not wrong, in 2017, intensified Mission Indradhanush. As per this, wherever 70% is covered districts, these all districts will be targeted, less than 70%. The target is to reach to the immunization to 90%. But however, lockdown did not make the progress. And even our progress on intensified Mission Indradhanush is not very successful. That's how I can put it as. So this can be a risk to the future. Now, UNICEF is the one which stated that in this child rights are being spoken about: right to education, right to nutrition, right to health, right to participate, right to protect, right to clean water. These are the rights of the children which are stated by the UNICEF. Thank you very much. Have a great day. One more thing. At Law Excellence, we are starting a new material development program. In this, we are developing first the economic survey material. We are trying with certain diagrams and pictures which are hand drawn, which can be reproduced by the students in the exam hall. So that particular way of developing the new material is of its kind. We are working on that particular thing, and thank you very much.